The doomed Roman city of Pompeii. Destroyed by the eruption of a killer volcano. Buried beneath ash and rock for nearly 2,000 years, Pompeii's death is legendary. But the mystery of its birth remains unsolved. Now, scientists venture beneath the surface of this lost world to discover why the people of Pompeii founded their city in one of the most dangerous places on Earth.
What we should ask ourselves is, why would people build on a volcano?
Breakthroughs reveal surprising secrets hidden in this apocalyptic landscape.
When this eruption started, people had no time to escape.
Could this deadly volcano actually be the very reason why Pompeii exists at all? To solve these mysteries, we'll pull apart this remarkable city stone by stone. We'll dive beneath the marble floors and behind the frescoes to unearth the astonishing secrets of this doomed metropolis and discover why it was founded here, in the danger zone. Pompeii, built in the shadow of mainland Europe's most active volcano, Vesuvius. An entire Roman city with a population of 11,000 people, razed to the ground by an apocalyptic eruption. Entombed 2,000 years ago by nearly 25 feet of volcanic debris. But now, investigators are digging beneath the layer preserved by the ash. Their goal? To delve into a deeper mystery and shed light on the city's very foundations.
We always think of Pompeii as the classic Roman town, and we forget that this has got a long, long history of occupation beforehand.
Underneath a thick layer of volcanic debris lies an entire ancient metropolis preserved for centuries. Flanked by shops and bars, Pompeii's main street is frozen in time. It led to the center of the city, the Forum. It was enclosed on 3 sides by a grand pillared arcade. Once the bustling heart of Pompeii. Who founded this city? And why was it constructed in the blast zone of an active volcano? Archaeologist Sophie Hay has dedicated her career to investigating Pompeii. She's trying to piece together how and why the city emerged here.
This is what makes Pompeii so special. You can see the state of preservation here, unparalleled in the Roman world.
A third of the town still remains untouched by archaeologists to preserve the treasures under the ash. But today, for the first time in more than a decade, a major new excavation is beginning. The dig gives Sophie a rare chance to investigate the shocking depth to which Pompeii was buried. It highlights the enormous challenge archaeologists face in their search for this city's mysterious origins.
This is the material that Vesuvius dumped upon Pompeii during the 79 AD eruption, and this just filled these rooms.
The preservation of everyday Roman life is breathtaking. It has made Pompeii's story truly iconic. Even now, archaeologists are unearthing grand villas adorned with intricate wall paintings and beautiful mosaics. They're building an incredibly detailed picture of how Pompeii's people lived. From the bankers and politicians to the slaves and gladiators.
This is the closest contact I can have with the Romans, seeing the everyday objects that they used nearly 2,000 years ago.
Archaeologists are still unearthing victims from the city's final day, like this man crushed by flying rubble. But beneath the Roman layer hide untold secrets.
Most of the excavations of Pompeii stop at the Roman level, and we've got a long way to go before we understand the origins.
Who founded this city? And why did they choose this spot? Can a discovery at the gates of Pompeii reveal why the city emerged here beneath a volcano? Buried underground, archaeologists have discovered a tomb, undisturbed for more than 2,000 years. Stone slabs mark the final resting place of a solitary female skeleton. There are few clues to her identity, but surrounding her body are 12 beautifully decorated vases, painted in a style almost unlike anything else excavated in Pompeii. What can these rare objects reveal about the area's secret history? The vases open a window onto the little-known tribes who occupied Pompeii before Rome conquered it in 80 BC.
They estimate these potteries are coming from the end of the 5th century before Christ.
Wow, that's a good few hundred years before Roman Pompeii.
These vases are extremely old, but the decoration is not Roman. It's Greek. For Sophie and pottery specialist Letitia Cavassa, the origin of the tomb's offerings is an important clue.
This one and the other one are coming from Greece.
And these two here, they're beautiful.
We think it's an Italic production, but it looks like Greek.
Before the rise of Rome, the Greeks were one of the most advanced civilizations in the Mediterranean. The vases suggest they were here, sharing their culture with early Pompeians. But why? Today, Pompeii seems an unlikely place to find a Greek vase. But 2,000 years ago, it was a center of trade close to the sea. The city was strategically placed near the Sarnus River, giving the town direct access to the Bay of Naples. Surrounded by the steep slopes of ancient volcanoes, the bay was known for its unusually deep waters. Much of Italy's coast is made up of shallow beaches that large ships cannot approach. So the Bay of Naples became vital for international trade. Sophie believes ancient Greek commerce may be the key to unlocking Pompeii's origins. She heads to the town's oldest district in search of more evidence.
This is the Triangular Forum. It's a slightly mysterious place in Pompeii. It feels very different.
Archaeologists believe the Triangular Forum is a remnant of Pompeii's earliest days. Clues to the town's beginnings survive in the stonework here.
So this is the last piece in the jigsaw. This huge piece of architectural fragment was a column capital, so right at the top of a column. But it's not Roman, it's Greek. And it dates to the 6th century BC, so 700 years before the eruption of Vesuvius.
The temple overlooks the old course of the river. Sophie believes it's a clear sign that Pompeii was tapping into the ancient Greek trading world. The Greek columns would have been visible to passing traders in search of markets to sell goods, everything from pottery to food and even slaves.
Pompeii was a melting pot of cultures from the 6th century BC all the way through to the Roman period, and that's sort of encapsulated here.
By 79 AD, Pompeii had developed into a thriving trading hub, thanks to steep volcanic slopes forming a deep natural harbor. But was the volcano providing more than just a port? Was the force that eventually killed Pompeii the very thing that allowed it to flourish in the first place? Pompeii. An entire Roman city destroyed and preserved by a volcanic eruption. The settlement's history stretches back hundreds of years before 79 AD. But why did Pompeii change from a small coastal port to a major commercial hub? Did the volcano itself provide the resources needed for the town's transformation into a thriving Roman city? Geologist Guido Giordano thinks a clue may lie hidden in the actual fabric of Pompeii's buildings.
Everywhere you walk through this city, you find evidence of volcanic material being used in construction. And this is because volcanoes produce a wide variety of rock types, from hard and heavy lavas to soft and light volcanic tuffs. And in the Bay of Naples, those are everywhere.
Pompeii's Roman roads were laid with tough lava stone to withstand the heavy traffic of horse-drawn carts. Decorative architectural features were sculpted from softer volcanic tuff. Did these materials attract the first Pompeians to this location? Beneath a house in the south of the city lies evidence of Pompeii's original architecture. Stone foundations buried below the surface that predate the surrounding buildings by hundreds of years. They stretch back to the 6th century BC. Made from soft volcanic rock and packed into the ground, a mere 4 inches deep, these foundations were the roots of the earliest structures in Pompeii. Could this rock hold the answer to why this city grew and flourished here? In 79 AD, Vesuvius had been dormant for hundreds of years. But volcanic material from much older eruptions formed the region's bedrock. So what was it that made this rock so useful to ancient builders?
Building materials are fundamental to understanding ancient civilizations. This material is actually very soft, very easily workable, but at the same time, it is strong. And that's why Pompeii is largely made of blocks of tuffs like this one.
The volcano provided the raw material for early Pompeians to build their settlement. But Guido believes that when the Romans conquered the region, their ingenious use of tuff helped them to supersize the city. He investigates a stone mine deep beneath the nearby city of Naples. Here, ancient tuff can be found in its original state, volcanic ash cemented into rock. The citizens used carved blocks of tuff to construct Pompeii's grand public buildings, but they also used it as a mortar. When crushed, the rock turns back into loose ash.
One of the most revolutionary invention of ancient Romans was to mix this volcanic ash with quicklime to produce a cement that is actually able to dry even in wet environments.
The Romans' development of hydraulic cement meant they could build underwater. This wonder material transformed their influence within the Mediterranean.
This invention allowed them to build concrete structures and piers for their harbors. And this is probably one of the key aspects of the success of Pompeii.
The advanced infrastructure of the Bay of Naples ports enabled Pompeii to thrive on Mediterranean trade. But what were Pompeii's merchants selling? Was living beneath a volcano actually boosting the city's economy? With commerce flourishing in the bay, business boomed for traders. Nowhere more than at the hundreds of bars across Pompeii. These served locally grown food to visitors and Pompeians alike. perhaps functioning as informal meeting points where trade deals could be made. The walls were covered in frescoes depicting the Roman god of wine, Bacchus. And their storerooms were stocked full of amphorae, vessels for transporting wine. Amphorae bearing Pompeii's stamps have turned up across the Roman Empire, from Britain to North Africa. So was wine at the heart of Pompeii's roaring trade? Today, farmers grow grapes in organic vineyards all over the mountain. Guido believes that Vesuvius's geology may offer a huge advantage to this industry. Today's soils contain the products of Vesuvius's most recent eruption. The latest was in 1944. 2,000 years ago, Pompeii's winemakers would have been growing vines in the ash of earlier eruptions.
This kind of material is very easily weathered by water, by rainwater, so the minerals are released to the soil very quickly.
Until 79 AD, Vesuvius hadn't erupted for centuries, long enough for generations of farmers to safely establish vineyards and perfect the art of winemaking. Guido tests the acidity of the soil. It confirms the reason for Pompeii's success in wine production.
So this has worked perfectly. Look at the orange color. That means that the soil is very acidic. And this is due to the presence of a very high content of potassium in the Vesuvius volcanic ash. Potassium is very important to plants. So that's the reason why this soil is so fertile.
Pompeii had everything it needed to become a thriving trading hub. The volcano provided natural harbors, the raw material for commercial infrastructure, and even its major export, wine.
Pompeii had a prime location, so no wonder it was flourishing in the first century.
The volcano was clearly key to Pompeii's prosperity. As it grew, more people came to live in the danger zone. But did the benefits that allowed the city to prosper come at a deadly cost? Long before Vesuvius erupted? And did the people of Pompeii know that their time was running out? Pompeii, one of the most perfectly preserved cities in the ancient world. Now archaeologists are discovering that the town destroyed by Vesuvius in 79 AD was no ordinary Roman city. Pompeii was a 600-year-old Mediterranean trading hub. It owed its very existence to the volcano and the resources it provided. But was Vesuvius also extracting a deadly price, even before it erupted? A clue lies in the city's lifeblood, its ingenious Roman water network. At the highest point of the city stands the Castellum Aquae, distributing water throughout Pompeii. Connected to it, lead pipes travel 150 yards downhill beneath the sidewalk to the first water tower. This fed the city's homes and public baths. But encrusted on the brick, a thick mineral deposit built up over decades. Could this residue have had a potentially deadly effect on the people living here? Forensic anthropologist Pier Paolo Petroni wants to find out. The bones of the dead could hold the answers, but they're locked away from forensic examination. Contorted in their agonizing death poses and covered by falling ash, the victims were preserved by 19th century archaeologists. They cast in plaster the molds left by the long decayed bodies. But the plaster is so dense, even CT scans struggle to penetrate through to the bone inside. So for clues, Pier Paolo examines skeletons excavated from neighboring Herculaneum. This was another town buried by the eruption of 79 AD. He looks for evidence that could explain the effect of living beneath Vesuvius.
In Pompeii, in Herculaneum, we have a complete population that is fixed in the time due to a sudden natural catastrophe. It's a kind of a cross-section of a living population.
Pier Paolo uses a CT scanner to investigate the skull of a man who died sheltering from the eruption. The scans reveal a surprise. This man was relatively old when the volcano killed him.
From the tomography, we can see something very interesting, which is a kind of flattening, which is typical of old people. In Roman time, most of people lived until 35, 40s, not longer. So they died very young. But this is a very old man.
Was Vesuvius having a sinister effect on his quality of life? Pier Paolo examines the skeletons in search of a pattern of pathology. In almost every victim, he finds strange bony growths that would have made joints stiff and painful. In some cases, the effects are shockingly severe, even leading to paralysis.
We find this kind of alteration in all ages. This is a young male, and you see that we have a complete fusion of the hip with the sacrum, which should be free. In this case, it's completely fused.
Pier Paolo analyzes the victim's teeth to find more clues. What he discovers suggests that the mystery disease was linked to their diet and the region's volcanic soil.
We have a kind of discoloration of these teeth, which is very typical of fluorosis.
Fluorosis is caused by the excessive consumption of the mineral fluoride. Pier Paolo thinks that the people of Pompeii were being slowly poisoned by a contaminated water supply. Vesuvius's permeable volcanic rock is rich in fluoride. As rain filters through the ground, this fluoride dissolves into the water, entering springs in the valley below. The Romans used these polluted springs for drinking water and built an ingenious aqueduct to carry it down to Pompeii. At the Castellum Aquae, the water was divided to supply fountains, baths, and houses across the city. The people drank the fluoride-laced water, which over time ravaged their bones and joints. The volcanic terrain that had nurtured the city was sucking the life from its population. The people of Pompeii had prospered due to the volcano's natural resources. But did they have any idea they were living beneath a silent killer? Should they have spotted the warning signs that this volcano was about to erupt? And could they have escaped? Pompeii, the Roman city destroyed by a giant volcanic eruption. Today, archaeologists are still digging down through the millions of tons of volcanic debris to uncover its hidden secrets. Could Pompeii's citizens have known their time was running out? Volcanologist Giuseppe Mastrolorenzo investigates the heartbeat of this sleeping giant. He's trying to figure out whether the volcano offered any warning of the fury it was about to unleash.
It is hard to comprehend how devastating was the AD 79 eruption. In a few hours, all the villages and towns around Vesuvius were destroyed, and thousands of people were killed.
Even today, 1/3 of this city is still completely buried under volcanic ash.
From here you can have an idea of the impact of the eruption. This part is not excavated, and this is completely excavated. Several meters of deposit produced by the eruption in a few hours. This was an incredible event.
Did the people of Pompeii have any inkling of the cataclysm that was coming their way? There may be a clue in the walls of one of Pompeii's partially excavated buildings. This impressive villa set around a courtyard. Inside is a snapshot of Pompeii's final moments. On the north wall, the yellow sketched outline of an unfinished fresco. Beneath it, archaeologists discovered pots stained with bright paint pigments. Alongside them, larger pots containing lime plaster, the base layer for another painting. But there's a strange mistake. Plaster was splashed on the wall covering the fresco, evidence of a panic when this room was abandoned. People were working here right up until the eruption. Should they have spotted the warning signs?
Painters were restoring the frescoes, as you can see from the new plaster on the walls. This restoration was necessary because of the damage caused by earthquakes before the eruption.
Earthquakes often occur in the lead-up to an eruption. They're caused by molten rock or magma building up within the volcano. Archaeologists have identified more signs of earthquake damage around the city. Cracks in stone walls, patched up with bricks. The people of Pompeii were still making repairs even though the volcano had started to produce tremors. Why? The Romans were no strangers to active volcanoes, such as Etna and Stromboli. Their eruptions were rarely preceded by earthquakes, but seismic activity did occur regularly. Italy straddles a major fault line where two mighty tectonic plates meet. This boundary makes Italy one of Europe's tremor hotspots, suffering a devastating earthquake on average roughly every 5 years. Pompeii itself had been hit 17 years before the eruption, so it's unlikely that people connected the tremors with the mountain. So if the Pompeians didn't know they were living beneath a volcano, how much time did they get to save themselves when the eruption finally began? Giuseppe believes he's found a lead in the volcanic fallout. These little stones are fragments of rock called pumice, ejected from the volcano.
This is fantastic. Here we can see a sequence of pumice, more than 2 meter thick sequence, which is the first phase of the eruption. So the first material which was erupted from the volcano. This is the best record we have.
Giuseppe thinks these pumice stones might reveal how quickly the eruption took place. At his laboratory in Naples, Giuseppe and his team take a closer look. Deep within the rock's microstructure lies the imprint of the eruption itself. The team uses X-rays to isolate the individual crystals and bubbles of air within it. This technique allows Giuseppe to decipher the conditions inside the volcano when the pumice was formed. This will reveal how quickly the magma was expelled.
Here you can see bubbles and crystals which were formed when magma rose from the magma chamber to the surface.
The tiny size of the crystals within the pumice suggests they had very little time to grow.
The formation of these crystals was in the order of hours or less. The eruption was very quick. When this eruption started, people had no time to escape.
As the pumice rained down on Pompeii, roofs collapsed under its weight, crushing the people taking shelter below. But this was only a precursor to a much more deadly force. What exactly happened during the eruption? And could new evidence reveal that there may even have been survivors? The eruption of Mount Vesuvius in 79 AD shocked and terrified the people of Pompeii. For years, the town had been rocked by tremors and earthquakes. Archaeologists believe that its citizens didn't connect the shaking of the ground with the threat of eruption. Many ignored it until it was too late. The devastation of the city was rapid and merciless. But scientists are now uncovering evidence that some people may incredibly have been able to live through the eruption. When archaeologists excavated Pompeii, they discovered strange cavities inside the ash. As burned bodies decayed, they left voids in the hardened material, eerie imprints of these people's last moments that even captured facial expressions. Encased in the ash, the victims' bones remained long after their clothes and flesh had gone. But the blast wasn't hot enough to instantly incinerate the bodies. So was the temperature at a level that some people could have survived. Geologist Guido Giordano searches the scorched walls of Pompeii. He pieces together a detailed picture of exactly what its citizens were up against.
When the volcano erupted, a giant cloud of hot rocks and ash was fired up to 30 kilometers in height. People must have been terrified.
As the rocks began to fall, the people of Pompeii would have begun to flee. But what happened next? The force of the eruption propelled millions of tons worth of material into the sky. As the pressure dropped, the rock and ash began to fall. A cascade of volcanic debris called a pyroclastic flow descended down the mountain on a cushion of air, flattening everything in its path.
When the column collapsed, producing a huge avalanche very fast, full of rock debris, the top layer of that was a giant cloud of searing hot gas and dust.
Anyone who avoided the rock flow would have faced the surge of superheated gas. For a long time, scientists believed that people still left in the city would have died instantly. But Guido Giordano and his team want to find out if anyone caught up in the cloud could have survived. Volcanologists believe that when the pyroclastic flow surged towards Pompeii, temperatures in the ash cloud exceeded 750 degrees Fahrenheit. Hot enough to melt lead.
This is an extremely hot temperature, unsurvivable for human beings.
But what happened to those temperatures when the cloud entered the city? Traveling at over 60 miles per hour, barely touching the ground, the 750-degree flow reached Pompeii in just a few minutes. But in the city, any walls still standing could have provided refuge, shielding some areas from the full force of the blow. Clues within Pompeii's buildings suggest the temperature of the cloud may have dropped in these pockets of shelter.
Inside some of the houses, you could still find bread or furniture virtually untouched by the heat wave. So this tells us that the dynamics of the pyroclastic flow, once it entered the city, must have gone through changes.
Using a pioneering technique, Guido believes he can work out how the ash cloud behaved when it reached Pompeii's streets and houses. The secret is locked in the fragile remnants of wood found within pyroclastic deposits. When wood is transformed into charcoal, its cells dry out. Its surface becomes shiny and reflects light, a property Guido can measure.
We can convert the intensity of the light reflected into the temperature of the pyroclastic flow.
For Guido, the results are tantalizing. Some samples were burned at around 750 degrees Fahrenheit, but others burned at a much lower heat.
The temperatures inside Pompeii were actually much more variable than we expected.
In some areas, the heat never got above 300 degrees Fahrenheit. Guido believes at this temperature, against all odds, people might have lived through the thermal shock.
In local areas of Pompeii, there could have been conditions for survival for human beings.
The possibility that its citizens could have escaped the pyroclastic surges rewrites Pompeii's history. But in the days following the eruption, their town was consumed by the fallout. Pompeii was beyond rescue, but its story is only partly told. What archaeological treasures still hide in the city's last buried areas? And what threat does Vesuvius pose today? "2,000 years ago, Pompeii was destroyed by the eruption of Vesuvius. Torn apart by pyroclastic flows and buried by ash and pumice. Today, a third of the town still rests in its volcanic grave. But the new dig is starting to explore this hidden district. What are Pompeii's last remaining secrets?
We're standing on...
Sophie Hay joins Pompeii's Director General Massimo Ossana. His team is about to dig down into what appears to be a townhouse.
So I see a little glimpse down here of something.
This is the top of the wall, the first wall of our new excavation.
Most of the city's buildings were raised to the ground floor. But this wall stands 13 feet above street level. Incredibly, it suggests this home's upper floors may have survived.
In this part of the town, the pyroclastic surge was not so really destructive. It's really fantastic to understand the ancient architecture.
The exposed brickwork is lined with a seam of plaster. As the excavation progresses, it reveals richly decorated rooms. Vivid depictions of birds and sea creatures emerge from the ash. Shielded from the worst of the heat, this house is a remarkable time capsule. This new area allows archaeologists to resurrect the city's lost upper levels. Pompeii still has many more secrets to yield. But one day, could all this be buried again? Vesuvius has erupted more than 30 times since it consumed the city. Giuseppe Mastro Lorenzo and his colleagues at the Vesuvius Observatory watch the mountain for signs of its stirring. It's not just Vesuvius that threatens the modern Gulf of Naples. The entire bay is ringed by volcanoes, including Europe's largest, Campi Flegrei.
Campi Flegrei is a super volcano. It is probably the most dangerous volcano in the world. If Vesuvius or Campi Flegrei will erupt, there are at least 3 million people possibly exposed to the pyroclastic surges and flows. At the moment, there is no an effective emergency plan for Vesuvius or Campi Flegrei. So there is no way to allow these people to evacuate this area before the eruption.
The potential costs of an eruption today are unimaginably high. So despite Pompeii's warning from history, why today is the volcano's blast zone more populated than ever? For the people in the Bay of Naples, the benefits of living here outweigh the risks. Their ancestors have been making the same calculation for thousands of years.
Volcanoes provide a wealth of benefits at all times, and occasionally severe hazards. The people of the East region have learned to be resilient, to cope with the volcanic hazard.
Vesuvius fostered a thriving population for centuries. But for the town of Pompeii, luck ran out in 79 AD. The mountain finally called in the dead. The ruins are a time capsule, preserving the volcano's cycle of birth and destruction. Yet despite the danger, people have returned in their millions to live in its shadow. It's almost inevitable that one day, the pattern will be repeated.